Here's how most teams test an AI feature before they ship it. Someone types in a few questions, decides the answers look good, and clicks deploy. We call that shipping on vibes, and it works right up until it doesn't. Because the language model can be confidently wrong, and eyeballing 10 answers tells you nothing about the thousands of conversations happening in production. So let me show you how to replace vibes with something you can actually measure, using Langfuse to build a real evaluation pipeline around your app. This is a customer support assistant for a product called Nimbus Cloud. In this case, I would assume you've already got tracing set up. For Nimbus Cloud, every request already shows up as a trace with the full story. Here's a single support conversation. I can see exactly what got retrieved from our docs, the prompt we sent, the response, the token counts, and the latency. The whole pipeline in one view. Monitoring is how you make sense of all that. It does two jobs: tracking accurate trends like cost, latency, and quality scores over time, and surfacing the individual traces worth investigating right now. And here's a shift that takes you from reactive to systematic. Your production traffic is the best test set you'll ever have, because it's full of messy, real-world questions you never would have thought to write yourself. Take this one. A user asked which regions we support, and the agent confidently listed a region, EU West 3, that doesn't exist. It even picked up a thumbs down from the user. That thumbs down is explicit user feedback, the clearest signal you get. Though there's also implicit feedback, like a user rephrasing the question or abandoning the chat. Both land in Langfuse as scores. Reading through traces like this and naming what went wrong is called error analysis. And for each failure, the real decision is whether it's a one-time prompt fix or a recurring pattern worth testing for. This one's a pattern I never want to ship again, so let's capture it. I'll start by creating a place to collect cases like it. I'll go to datasets in the left sidebar, click new dataset, and give it a name. A dataset is just a collection of test cases you run your app against every time you make a change. Now, when I find a trace where the app got something wrong, I open it, hit add to dataset, and pick this one. Langfuse pulls in the original input automatically, and right here I fill in the expected output, the answer I actually wanted, the 4 real regions and nothing invented. That's a reference answer, a gold standard response the judge can compare against later. I save it, and just like that the failure is captured. Do this a few times and that dataset becomes a living benchmark of the exact cases your application needs to get right. A benchmark that mirrors real production traffic. That's how a failure stops being an incident and becomes a permanent regression test. But a dataset is only useful if you can score against it, and grading thousands of answers by hand obviously doesn't scale. That's where evaluators come in. There are really 3 ways to evaluate. Reading outputs yourself, which is where you always start to build intuition. Code evaluators for deterministic checks like valid JSON or length limit, and LM as a judge for anything that needs understanding language, like whether an answer is actually correct. Let me set one up. I'll head to the Evaluators tab and click Create Evaluator. An evaluator is just an automated judge. First, I pick the dimension I want to measure. Here, I'll grab the Manage Evaluator for correctness, and I choose the model that does the judging. Langfuse hands me the scoring rubric written as a prompt, right there on screen. Then I decide what it runs on. I can point it at live observations, so every answer my app generates in production gets scored automatically as it happens, and I can sample, say, 10% of traffic to keep the cost same. Or I can run it against a controlled dataset instead in an experiment. Either way, the key step is variable mapping. I tell the judge which field is the original question, which is the answer my app produced, and which is the correct answer to compare against. Because I'm comparing against a known correct answer, this is a reference-based evaluator. If any of that is buried inside a nested JSON payload, I point at it with a JSON path expression, and a live preview shows me the fully filled-in prompt, so I know the mapping is right. When it runs, the judge returns a score plus a short written reason, and that score gets attached straight to the data. One caveat. An LLM judge isn't perfect. You calibrate it against a few human-labeled examples, so you trust it's measuring what you think, and simple pass-fail scores tend to be more reliable than a vague 1 to 5 scale. Since I want to grade against the correct answers I saved in my dataset, I'll run this evaluator as an experiment. Every experiment has the same anatomy: a baseline, my current production setup, the dataset, one variable I'm changing, and the outputs I compare. I'll change just the prompt and keep everything else fixed. So I'll open my dataset and click Run Experiment. I'll pick the prompt I want to test. Then I'll choose the dataset. I'll set up the evaluator for correctness. And then I map the variables. Langfuse takes a new version, runs it across every item in the dataset, and scores each answer with the evaluator I just set up. A minute later, I switch to a view comparing both ones. And here I get the old version and the new one side by side. I always read a few traces side by side first. That's how you learn what better actually means for your app. And then let the scores make it concrete. And this is the payoff. The new prompt lifted average correctness from around 0.65 to 0.9, so most cases got better. But if I scroll down, this one row is performing badly, the "what is the default query timeout" question. My change quietly regressed it. It now answers 60 seconds instead of the correct 30. On Vibes, I never would have caught that. It would have shipped straight to users. And that's the whole loop. You trace what happens in production, use error analysis to find the failures that matter, capture them into a dataset, score them automatically with evaluators, and run experiments so every change is measured before it ships. Then production feeds the cycle all over again, and your agent gets measurably better with real usage instead of drifting on guesswork. The best part is that all of this is open source and the trace data is stored in ClickHouse under the hood, so it scales to billions of traces without breaking a sweat. We also have a CI/CD feature implemented, so you can run this together with your pull requests to see if any regressions are found. Want to try it yourself? Go replace your Vibes with Evals on Langfuse.